All right, guys, today we're going to be talking about subtracting mixed numbers. You did adding mixed numbers yesterday. I would really like to show this to you on the dot camera, but I know you guys like these kind of videos, and I know you guys also really like to see your math book. So we're going to look at this today. In the video you saw yesterday by Math Antics, it is really important that you did watch that video yesterday. So if you didn't, you really want to look at that video. They taught you a couple different ways to add fractions. And I think that the most important method that they showed you is the stacking method. Your book does not show you how to stack fractions for adding or subtraction. They basically keep laying it out for you like you're adding or decomposing in parts. And I want you to really understand that the stacking method is really important because you are ultimately going to need to regroup some of these fractions. Your parents and I, as moms and dads, if you're listening, we learned how to do things like convert an improper fraction to a mixed number and move a mixed number to an improper fraction by doing multiplying and dividing. And I'll show them that too. But I want them to learn how to do it kind of a fast way. And because a lot of our multiplication facts are not strong still, this way kind of helps them. So today, these are the practice problems that you are going to be working on, but we're going to talk about how to subtract a mixed number. And it seems really easy until suddenly, just like in regular subtraction, sometimes your number that's on the top is smaller than the number on the bottom, and you can't do it. If I have 2 cookies, I cannot give you 4 cookies. And so suddenly we have a problem. Okay, so let's do some subtracting of fractions, subtracting of our mixed numbers, and then let's see how that works out. Okay, I'm hoping it's going to let me open that up. Yeah, and you can still see it. Brad. Okay, so the first one that I'm going to do for you today is the one that comes straight from the book. And I'm going to do it with a marker that I hope is dark enough for you guys to see. All right, and we're going to do stacking, just like they showed us in the book. In the video yesterday. Oh, get a good pen. All right, so we're going to start by stacking. And the first fraction that they give us, the first mixed number that they gave us was, they write it like this. They write 3 1/5 minus 2 2/5. Right? And they say, even in Math Antics, I think sometimes they said subtract the whole number, then subtract the fraction. It's way more important that you start by subtracting the fraction than the whole number. Because when you subtract the fraction first, you can decide if you have enough. If you have enough fraction, or if you need to go and borrow from the whole number. So I'm going to do like that one method suggested, and I'm just going to number this number 1. And I'm going to stack these, okay? So the most important part is that I better get under him, is that we stack it, okay? So I'm going to just do what we had here, and I'm just going to move this guy over. And so I'm going to say minus 2 2/5. Just like they kind of showed us yesterday, here's your fraction, and here is your whole number. Okay, so you have whole numbers and you have fractions. So I start here, and I have to ask myself, 1/5 minus 2/5. If I have 1/5, can I give you 2/5? I cannot do that. I can't. So already on the first problem they gave us in the book, I was stuck. Well, the book shows you how to break this down into an improper fraction. They show you how to turn a mixed number into an improper fraction, okay? And that way is perfectly fine. That's the way your parents would probably want you to do it too. They would say, well, how many parts are we working with? Fifths. So this one, they would say, well, you have 3 whole sets of 5 out of 5. So they would say 5/5, which is our magic 1, plus 5/5, plus 5/5. Right? You have 3 whole sets of 1 plus 1/5. That makes 3 1/5. And then you have 2 2/5, still working with fifths. And I have 2 wholes, so I have 5/5 plus 5/5 plus 2/5. And they do it just like I do in the book, and they make these magic ones. So you remember, wow, I had 3 whole, 1, 2, 3, and 1/5. When I add those fractions, I get 5, 10, 15, 16 out of 5. And when I do these, I get 5, 10, 12 out of 5. Now, when I go to subtract that, I can do it. 16 fifths minus 12 fifths, I can do that. Okay, so we're going to check here and see I get 4 fifths. That's all that's left. Well, I want to show you here that when you stack it, I said, oh, well, I'm just going to put this box here because we moved this guy over, okay? We moved him down. So if I had 1 fifth minus 2 fifths, and I was like, oh, I don't have enough. If I have 1, I can't give you 2. Well, I need to borrow from that 3. He has 3 whole sets. He has 3 full pies of 3, right? So I'm going to borrow from him. I'm going to turn him into a 2. Now he has 2 whole because I took a whole from him. Well, how many parts are in a whole? How many pieces were in that pie that I showed you? 5, right? We're knowing we're always working with full 5 pieces. So I took a whole one. So it's like almost like I took this away. Okay, so now instead of having 1 fifth, 3 and 1 fifth, I have 2 and 6 fifths because I added 5 pieces to it. Okay, now I can go 6 fifths minus 2 fifths is 4 fifths, and 2 minus 2 is 0. So here you see our answers are the same. It was just a little faster for me than having to add it all up and decompose it. Let's do another one where I know I'm not going to have enough, or I'm going to have to borrow. It will not always be that way, but I want to make sure you know how to do it when you do get stuck with one. Okay, so let's do another one. 6 1/3. Let's do another one. This comes from your guided practice. 6 1/3 minus 2 2/3. Okay? Now, I could take 6 whole, and I could literally add how many parts are in 1 whole? 3. So everything is based out of 3s, okay? Like if I was to draw the pie, we're talking about pies broken into 3 parts. I would have to do 3 out of 3, 6 different times and add it up. Or 6 times 3 plus 1, right? This is the way we will learn later, all right? But what I can do here is I can say, oh gosh, if I have 1/3, once again, I only have 1, I can't give you 2. And this is where you do have to still think about it, just like in subtraction. If I have 1, I can't give you 2. So who am I going to borrow from? Who has to borrow, the 2 or the 1? This guy does. He doesn't have enough to take 2 away. So he's going to borrow from this guy because he's got 6 whole things. So we're going to borrow from him. I'm going to borrow 1 whole piece. And so 6 is now going to become a 5, which means he gave me a whole pie. How many pieces are in the pie? You got it. 1, 2, 3. 3 in every whole set. So now instead of having 1, I have 1 plus 3, right? Which means I'm going to rewrite it, which means now instead of 6 1/3, I now have 5 4/3. And you're right, that's a sloppy, mixed, improper fraction. It's very sloppy. You wouldn't normally leave 5 4/3 where your 4 is bigger than your 3. But we need it that way so we can do this problem. And minus 2 2/3. I didn't have to change him. And now I can say, subtract your fraction, 4/3 minus 2/3. If I have 4 minus 2, I still have 2/3. And now we have 5 minus 2, which is 3. Okay? Great job. All right? And I could check to see if I did these two, like if I wanted to go back and check, I could add these 2 up, and I would come back to my original 6 1/3. Okay? So we're going to do one more. I'm going to do one that doesn't involve things being hard and tricky. Let's just do a straight basic subtraction problem. Let's do my number 3 here. Let's do 6 and 5/8 minus 3 and 2/8. This is where you'll find subtracting mixed numbers is actually kind of fun, and it is not tricky. Right, now we do the same rule, which is subtract the fraction part. So 5/8 minus 2/8 gives us 5 minus 2 leaves, let's do it differently. I'm trying to put my finger in front. 5 minus, I don't know how you guys like your fingers. It leaves you with 3. I'm really great at this camera. Anyway, 3/8 and 6 minus 3 leaves 3. Okay, notice I didn't have to borrow from him because 5 minus 2 was totally doable. Okay, so you just do your fraction, then your whole number. I always think it's easier to stack it because then you guys see it just the way you would see it in regular subtraction or addition when you're doing regrouping or borrowing. And because here, like you see, we did borrow. But remember, when I borrow, I'm borrowing the whole thing, and so you have to know how many pieces that is. Here we borrowed 5 pieces. Here we borrowed 3 pieces. It depends on how many pieces are in that one whole. So pay attention. Otherwise, you can go back to like the book said, and you can break it down into how many pieces, right? How many pieces are in that whole. If you have 6 and 5/8, you would have to figure out how many individual pieces that is altogether, right? And I can show you the way they do that because just like we said here, if I was to do that, I have 6 whole sets of 8 out of 8, which means I have 6 times 8 makes 48, plus I have 5 left over. So I would say 6 times 8 is 48, plus the 5 left over equals 53 out of always the same bottom denominator, 8. This one here, we have 3 whole sets of 8, which is 24, plus the 2 on the top, the 2 leftover pieces, makes 26 out of the same denominator, 8. Then you would have to be subtracting 53 minus 26 over 8. So, and then you would have to convert that back into a mixed number. And so for you guys, I think, and parents, you're going to have to trust me on this one. I mean, you're really going to have to trust me. For 4th graders when they're learning this, my way is just better, right? Because then they have to not only do that, but they have to turn it back into that mixed number, which means they then have to divide and figure out the remainder. They would have to then go, oh, well, 8 goes into 27, because this is 53 minus 26 ends up being 27 over 8. And then you have to know that 8 goes into 27 3 times, remainder 3. So you would have 3 whole and 3 out of 8. And it's a whole nother step. So I promise you when I say stack it, subtract your fraction, subtract your whole. If you cannot subtract the fraction because you do not have enough, then you stop and you borrow 1 whole set from the number on top. Okay? Say it with me again. Stack them. Subtract the fraction. If you cannot, borrow from the whole number on top and give that fraction to that top fraction. Then subtract your whole. Have fun today. And remember, it's Tuesday, so we can always do it together in Zoom. All right? Bye.